Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. This is another special edition. It's not only special because it's coming out on a weekend, it's special because here at the Borderlands Podcast, we celebrate milestones. We celebrate, like, maybe we'll call them aid stations to be super cheesy. They're these moments where you've done something great, you're moving along, you're not at the ultimate goal, but you're en route to it. And this is a version of Wolfie's World today that I get to be a part of. It's episode 20. 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 10. Even rare to get to number 20. And when you think about what it takes to put out a podcast, especially a monologue podcast, it's super hard. Interviews, you can show up and talk about stuff with someone else. Monologues are hard. So today we celebrate. It's Wolfie's World episode 20. I'm here to join the party. You're going to hear this music, and then it's Brian's party.
Wolfie, he's a fast, cold-hearted son of a bitch. Don't think that he don't care. Tears it down, builds it back. It's Wolfie's World.
All right, man. Love it, Josh. Appreciate the intro.
Yeah.
Love having you back on here. Well, anytime we get to collab, it's great. So, yeah, it's kind of a
obviously
mashup with Bad Runner's Take and Wolfie's World. It's a topic, I think, that's right up both our alleys. You know,
Yep.
With Cocodona weekend, kicking off, it's going to be a crazy 5-7 day weekend. They got about, I think, 5 or 6 different race distances that are going to go off. So it's going to be incredible. And what was really fascinating, I don't even know if you've seen this, was they launched a trailer for the 125 hours of consecutive live coverage they're going to do.
Whew.
No. When a race has gotten so big that you're doing a hype trailer for the live stream is something to take notice about. Kind of just pause and reflect where we're at. Just celebrate it. There's a lot of, things that you can critique and unpack about Cocodona, but just the fact that they've got live stream coverage for 125 hours and they've really built, a massive, week-long, event for the 95 to coalesce and celebrate within the community is something awesome.
That is.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. It's super cool and it's super fun. I'm stoked. And I think what Cocodona represents for us is this kind of unique moment on the calendar, kind of in between, like right before Western States, well before UTMB, and we get to celebrate, the 95 still as the, I think, reason why Cocodona is what it is. On one hand, you've got Western States where it's basically, the top 10 returners, the golden ticket field. It's very professionalized and, it's great. It's the premier 100 miler and it should reflect that. But the 95 kind of gets lost there. With Cocodona, it's still the good old days of ultra trail running. Somebody like Harry Savalas that has no profile in the sport can run through the field of elites and win the race. And so for this year, I think we've got something that nobody's really touched on or really, acknowledged. And I want to build this kind of storyline around it and see where it goes. So just to set the stage, kind of taking on my best Dana White character here, because what we've got is basically like a nice, middleweight prize fight here, kind of like the BMF of self-expression, of, guys who have profiles bigger than just their ultra sign-up scores and rankings and podiums, right? So, what you've got here is Finn Melanson, right? We know him from his single track contributions and, talented runner himself versus Max
Salt Lake City.
I think Finn versus Max is probably one of the most interesting and entertaining storylines going into Cocodona.
I have not heard that. I've never heard those two names in the same sentence. And so I'm excited to hear you unpack that, Finn versus Max.
Yeah, I think it's just like, it's a natural rivalry that somebody just has to speak it into existence. I think two guys themselves aren't going to do it. The sport's too humble. Everybody, it's you're competing against yourself in the course. Ultimately, you've got to have, just like you get a trail nickname, somebody's got to anoint you with that. I think we've also got to be the ones that, build the rivalry,
good point.
Right? Like you can't just come out and say, I'm calling you out, because it's not about that. It's, about you competing, amongst yourself and the distance. So that's what I'm doing. I'm having fun with this. I'm saying, again, Finn versus Max. I want to see this as a rivalry. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but they're going to run against each other at Cocodona, and they're signed up to race again at Mammoth 200. So the fact that we've got something here as kind of a, multiple head-to-head matchup is also interesting for this year. So
Yeah.
let's just go through it like as if they're prize fighters. What you've got is Finn, 33 years old. He's, right now training about 81 miles a week, 11 and a half hours of total time, maybe about 8 to 10,000 feet of vert. That's just what I looked at as kind of his peak week for what he puts on Strava. Now, Finn's a gamesman, right? Like, do you think he's put everything on Strava?
That's what I was going to first ask. I think, he's an athlete from high school days. He's a baseball player, I think, football player maybe. I bet that there could be some gamesmanship, and also Strava doesn't reflect what he's doing in the gym. He looks like a big dude, so I don't think Strava reflects the full scope.
Right. Plus, he surrounds himself there with the Salt Lake City elite. He's always running and training with guys that are better than him, which is what you want to do.
Yep.
If you've got that luxury, that's a super talent there that kind of just multiplies anything you're doing or capable of on your own. So, yeah, I mean, if you're running around the elites and they're also, going Strava dark for certain key workouts or volume, I assume this may not be the full picture of what Finn's been doing.
Yeah.
So then you contrast that to Max, right? Max also 33 years old. So there's no age gap here. These guys are going to be going against each other at the 200-mile distance for a while. So I think it could be just a fun, nice 5-year run of building this rivalry out. Max, I think, puts everything on Strava. He's as transparent as anybody on his interviews. You ever listen to him with, Cam, Nick, Sally, all of these long form podcasts, he's an open book. And I think his training reflects that. This dude is going all in. So listen to this, 130 miles a week was his peak week, been averaging over 100 for running, about 20 hours of time on feet with about, just about 4,000 or 5,000 feet of vert. So not nearly as much, but on that same week, 162 miles on the bike. This was out on the roads, not a trainer, 10 hours of time on the saddle with about 6,500 feet of vert. So,
oh my gosh,
almost 300 total miles combined, about 20 hours. I'm sorry. 30 hours. Sorry. 30 hours total time between the two disciplines. And just over 10,000 feet.
Okay.
I mean, the dude's a workhorse. I mean, that's
absurd.
Yeah. So,
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if you've been following him at all this week, he's been spending times in hyperbaric chambers, putting that on his Instagram stories. So definitely taking time to pause and recover. And so, I was going to say, what do you think about just that type of volume that he's bringing to this preparation?
Okay, I'm seeing where my mind is instantly going is two different schools of approach here, which you've already nodded to. But Max feels like what he's putting out there, he wants to win. What little I know about Finn, I know he wants to win also, but coming from the Salt Lake school of elite runners where, none of them would know if they would know me from Adam. But knowing that they are a group that just like, they don't talk shit. They don't put it all out there. It's just their ultra sign up page is their shit talking. You know what I mean? They're not vocal. They just go get results. And so they're quieter about it. And I don't say that as a positive or negative. What I hear instantly out of this from Max is like hyperbaric chamber, all the other stuff. Okay. Yeah. He's hungry. Hyperbaric chamber was like, I'm here to win.
Right.
And I'm doing everything I want to win. And that's one of the things that we've wanted to celebrate over, mine and your friendship over the last year of saying, we want to see people who want to win and are like clearly putting it out there that they're showing up to win. You see some of that from Michael McKnight going into this, like his new way of training. He's speedy. I don't know how he's doing 6.5 minute miles now as a guy who's never, I've never seen him doing that 50K at Buffalo. My instant impressions of what you've presented is that Max, they both want to win. It feels like Max is putting it out there and putting some ego on the line, which is what helped me just finish my 100 miler to say, I want to win. I'm putting it out there. I'm going to win.
Yeah, totally. Or
be competitive at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was super alarmed, at first looking at the differences in the training volume in the 12 weeks that you can see on Strava. But again, I think we got to assume not everything's on here for Finn, unless there's underlying, niggles or anything like that, or, PTSD coming out of Trans Gran Canaria, the DNF that we all, got to see unfold, with the YouTube video, which is just great, filmmaking.
So transparency there,
yeah,
I guess,
exactly.
to his credit.
Yeah, I mean, that was, super appreciative for that look inside. But yeah, so leading up to this, massive showdown at Cocodona, they've kind of taken two different approaches as well, as far as like racing. So Finn's really tried to, I think, race his way along the way into fitness using, Trans Gran Canaria, using, 50Ks, 50 milers, as good, training tests to see where he's at fitness wise. And Max hasn't, he's only raced once. He raced at Black Canyon. So if we just look at what they've done, recently within, races, Max threw down at Black Canyon 3:49. I mean, he was just behind Brett, conversational pace Horning at Black Canyon, so with all of this mileage, February was still kind of, I think, in the early stages of the training, but still 3:49 at Black Canyon 50K is no slouch.
Yes.
And then what you have with Finn was, like we said, he DNF'd over at Trans Gran Canaria, but then, I think he was fitter than that result showcased. I mean, he went and ripped, was it Antelope Island? Is that how that's the name of it?
Yep. Yeah. Locally we just call it the Buffalo, but yeah, it's the Antelope Island, like 100 miler.
Yeah. So he ran the 50 miler there. I think he came in second under the previous course record, 6 hour, 13 minutes. So phenomenal shape there.
Gosh.
And then followed it up at Serengeti 50K. So I guess probably another,
I don't know that
local Utah one, probably.
Oh yeah, I do know that. Yeah. Very. I mean, kudos to Finn for picking like a local, like a yokel,
yes,
a real local race. I love it.
Yeah. And he shouted out the race and the RD for putting on a great race there for him on that one, and
nice.
Appreciated the support and everything. And yeah, I mean, he smoked at 4:13. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely taking different approaches on how they look at races. So it's harder for us to really key in to see what type of fitness, Max is bringing with all of this high volume. They definitely have different approaches in training and life. I think that's also why it's fun, kind of to build out this rivalry. I mean, they couldn't be polar opposite. You've got, like we said, Finn, training with and living with among the elite of Salt Lake City.
Right.
And then Max pretty much does everything solo. He either does it by himself or he does it with his buddies. He's got a buddy, Billy, that, he runs a lot of miles with. He's kind of like a road marathoner guy, shooting for sub 3 hours. So he's got guys around him that are fit enough to hang with him. He also trains with Cheeto Marlon Vera, him from UFC.
I don't.
Yeah, he's a UFC.
Oh.
Badass UFC fighter. And so he lives in Costa Mesa and he loves running.
Yeah.
Actually, he loves running in the build up for his fights. And so, yeah, they've connected and they've done some podcasting together, and you'll see them run, in the beach area. So yeah, just total opposite guys. Here's Max just laid back with some UFC fighters and chilling with his friends. And then, Finn's out there ripping with Caleb Olson and Mike McGonigal,
Tyler Green. Yeah. Is okay. Are they Rocky and Drago here? I think of Max more like Rocky a little bit in this scenario, and Finn is more like Drago in that the Rocky vibe, the Rocky attitude would have tons of tattoos all over him today. That mentality,
right?
And I think the Drago vibe would be clear of tattoos. I don't know. Finn might have tattoos. I don't know, but it's not the same thing as Max. That's for sure. And also I see so let's say Finn is getting an 81 to 89. Maybe that really is it. I bet it's a very dialed, very intentional, very, any word that you can possibly come up with to say that's the best 89 miles, 81 miles that a human can get to optimize them for a 250 miler. Compared to Rocky pulling a tree behind him in the snow in the middle of, northern Russia or wherever he's at for all of those scenes. That's how they strike me. So Max is going out, going big and just doing it. And Finn's the super dialed one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And I think, it's also worth mentioning that Finn is trained and coached by Tyler Green.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
That's awesome.
I mean, you put full faith and trust in the fact that, the captain, steering the ship here for Finn's training is, one of the best to ever do it, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, we could safely assume that it's not the full training volume. And then we can also safely assume that if the full training volume, it's intentionally done so because it's
Yeah.
got Tyler Green at the helm.
Yeah.
And
Whoa.
so I think that's one area that you might give the advantage to Finn in the sense that, he may be newer at taking running and these 200-miler distance races as or approaching them with the intention to perform like an elite. Like that's a recent pivot, I think, that we've seen with Finn and the podcast and his engagement with the community and the sport in the last, 18 months, or 12 months maybe, and so he's not leaving it up to his own, demise to figure it out. He's going to defer to guys that he's got in his corner who have done it before and, have expertise in it. Whereas Max is kind of also in that same, 24-month, maybe within the last year or so of putting himself out there, at Moab and TDS at UTMB with some intentionality to want to perform amongst the elites. So, yeah, you got to trust somebody who's got Tyler Green in their corner versus, maybe somebody who's going at it, by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to put this in context of the bigger field. Just out of curiosity. I mean, are you seeing these guys? I see them as I like where you're going. This is a fun conversation, a rivalry in each other.
Yeah.
Are you seeing them duking it out for the top spot in this race?
You got to put so much respect on somebody like Courtney, right? I mean, I think everybody's got Courtney as, the favorite going in. And so for you or I to sit here and say, as much as we would love to see somebody, who we probably resonate and connect with more like Max or Finn, we would love to see them go and win it. It's a stretch to say that they would go out because Courtney has experience at the multi-day, long trail FKT distances as well. So this isn't something where she's like Arlen Glick of last year, who's a fast 100-miler that's now trying to level up to these 250s. No, this is nothing unfamiliar to her. I think again, like we said, she made her fame off of Moab, and what she did. That kind of got her on Joe Rogan's radar and, really, I think, exposed her to so many people outside the running world. So she's got to be the favorite. But I do think that Finn and Max, should be considered right there among everybody else in the field, like a Versteeg. Versteeg's going to have a lot of, fanfare going into it because he's a Cocodona household name. I think Cocodona also, as much as Cocodona's relied on Versteeg's also relied on Cocodona. There's been this kind of symbiotic relationship between the two for the last 5 years. So, but I think Finn and Max could be right there with them. No doubt.
Who else? Do you know any other names? So I think I love Courtney overall number one.
Yeah,
I love that, and it sounds like what you're saying is that that's the expectation potentially right now, as opposed to like a dark horse thing. I'm just thinking again of this rivalry within the context. I'd hate to see them two only fighting it out for M7 and M8. Though if it became a real rivalry, that's also still fun.
And that's my point. Is I think that's if they're both having a day and they're both fighting it out for top 5 podium, top 3, that third place, of the podium, or like you said, even top 10, I think it's still fun because of, who they are and who we as the 95 kind of, latch onto them for different reasons. I think within the 95, like what this does is it really, both of them kind of capture either the 95 who resonates with somebody that's low key and, kind of, respected for his work ethic, like Finn, basically, who's I'm referencing with his podcast and everything, and kind of being thoughtful and just what he is and everybody's come to appreciate about him, but kind of like unassuming, right? And then Max is kind of that self-expression, full tattoos, full rip it, full send, SoCal guy, beach vibes. Like he's put out or been a feature in God, like what, 3 or 4 documentaries already. And so, I mean, he's burst onto the scene. And so it's kind of like Satisfy versus the Path Project or the Gore. Is he? I think Finn's Gore.
He's Gore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could.
Good. That's a great way to put it there.
Yeah.
Satisfy versus Gore. That, because I think they both have sponsors that reflect them really nicely. I see a lot of Gore over here in Europe. I think that's Goreware. I think that's a really good. Gore is like simple. It's not loud. It's basic colors, but functional. Really durable. Very good. That sounds like what we think of Finn. And then obviously we've talked about Satisfy a lot, and I think Max is the expression of that.
Right.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they both have a lot going for them. I kind of thought about, you remember when we were kids, the Spy vs. Spy cartoon?
Yes, I love Spy vs. Spy.
I mean, yeah, you could have a fun, way of like, building that image around these two guys. So, yeah, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, in the field, you got Dan Green, who I think a lot of people, are touting his.
He's my dark horse pick.
Yeah, dark horse, but I mean, he would only be a dark horse at something like this. It's silly because he's so fast. Right. I mean, he won a golden ticket, right? So. I mean, he's supposed to be racing at Western States. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, again, are, carrying a lot of expectations towards him to be competing, with Courtney for the overall win. And so, yeah, and then below that, go ahead.
I was just going to say, here's what I love about that. And this is, so Ryan Ramsby, who writes for Borderlands, the 100+ stuff, he's crewing Dan. And just today I was texting him like, hey, man, anything you can give me behind the scenes on Dan's race, I want it. I've already reached out to Dan to schedule a podcast with him. Like, I don't care how it goes because I know you're going to do an awesome job. Whatever happens, happens. However, you're the one who I'm hedging my bet on that I'm going to be talking to the winner, at least of the men.
Right.
But I just from everything I hear from Ryan, just Dan's a quality human and the type that you want to root for also. So I love that you said his name.
Yeah. I think that's, that's a solid pick. And yeah, I mean, I would love to talk to somebody like Dan because it's very interesting that like when you're as talented of a runner as he is, it takes you leveling up into a 250 distance to where your actual running talent becomes less important than your intangible talent. He's so talented at running, and yet he comes into Cocodona with so many question marks that would not otherwise be there in any other running event, right? So he's the perfect case study or case sample where it shows how the 250 is so much more than just running, because here's a guy who brings so much talent in the running bucket, and yet we're still looking at him with such a level of uncertainty. Whereas like Courtney, again, talented runner, she probably doesn't fill the running bucket up as high as he does with just overall potential of running times and speed, but she's done it before. So we're less concerned about her intangibles.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh man.
So yeah, then there's a bunch of returners from Cocodona last year. I think something like 6 or 7 out of the top 10 are going to be back. So you're going to have a familiar. I think that's also what's really neat about Cocodona is the people who race it are returners year over year over year. And so Cocodona is starting to build familiarity to it, like what we're asking for out of like a professional series. Like fans of Cocodona are becoming familiar with runners. Like Jeff Garminer, like I think anybody who's followed Cocodona knows who he is. But before Cocodona, like he wouldn't have had any sort of like, name recognition or, nobody would have really ever stopped to talk about him during the year. And now he's a household name. Now he's somebody that, coming into this year, is this going to be the year that he also continues to move up in his placing? So yeah, a lot of interesting people that I think Finn and Max are going to be vying for, having the day or days of their life to, get on the podium.
Gosh, this race snuck up on me. I hate not knowing as little as I do right now, but just hearing you talk about it I'm so pumped for next week.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I mean, there's going to be so much going on. I'm sure, again, there's something to be said for, it's going to be interesting this year to see if it takes a different feel because they've expanded how many races are going to be going on.
Right.
Like are just, how thin can you spread the live stream coverage and the conversation, right? And so before, Cocodona didn't have to compete with anything. It was all eyes on Cocodona, the field,
Yeah.
men and women. But now if you're having, races kick off, every day or two within a day, is the community going to want you to tune in and let us know what's going on there? Or are those going to take, truly a backseat and really not get much of the live stream coverage? It's going to be interesting to see how they, decide that they want to play that out. So it's a good problem to have, I guess, when you've got so many races and so much going on that's going to be hard to cover. But what do you think? Where would you go with like prioritizing the live stream coverage, knowing that you've got, 5 races now that are all part of this weekend, but it's really all, eyes on the main event. So how do you balance that?
So, okay, I think about this as a UTMB, as the the main event in Chamonix as the only model for this, is that they're going to have probably a few years of putting coverage on their shorter distances and everyone being bored, because you need to do what happened to year one, where you put the 250 on display and everyone was like, oh, I got to sign up for that. And so they sell it out quickly. So my mind instantly is like, you've got to give us those other distances to get us emotionally connected to them this year, at the risk of boring us. Do it again next year. Because eventually, imagine having a UTMB, a CCC, an OCC, all these races where you do care about each one. Right now, I personally, like I just said, the 250 has snuck up on me, even though I've been, seeing some of Cam Hanes' content about it. I know it's coming. The shoe, the Speedland shoe for it, all that sort of stuff. But I think I just think of it from a building demand for it. You got to, I fear there's going to be some boring stuff that we're going to perceive as boring this year, but it's actually building the demand on down the road to eventually having every distance being iconic. I think that Cocodona is now our best bet to a Chamonix main event. If they can build demand at all these, they've got demand at all the distances. If they can make each distance of consequence for the non-runner in the event. I'd love to go run the 125 or the whatever distances for me as a runner, but to care about someone else running it, they've got some work to do that they clearly know how to do that work. It's just a matter of doing it. So that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be fun. I'll be plugged in just to kind of see, how they decide to manage the balance of everything. Because what made Cocodona so special was just, like I said, you didn't have to fight for attention, and so
that's right.
You would see these moments in the live stream organically happen because there was a lull in, coverage basically, and so the community's just in the live chat, and they're creating nicknames for runners on the fly, right? Like there was Orange Hat Guy, and like they.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. So like or the Cocodona Blimp, right? Like there's all these moments that if you were there, you were part of it and you were having fun, like for the next 3 days, lighting up the chat when Orange Hat Guy comes around, or crowdfunding for this, imaginary blimp that they wanted for aerial footage. So I just hope
I just don't know that the magic can ever be there again like it was in year one. And I mean that only as a compliment, not as a slam for because it's clearly growing, it's thriving, it's flourishing. But because year one was so unexpected, and so we just all did. I don't know that we knew we would love it as much as we did.
Right.
And so we're in the chat. We're at the perfect time with the COVID connection, the timing where you're on your couch, and it gave us something. I don't know that. God bless Mammoth, and I hope that they crush it and thrive. I don't know that a 250 can ever have a place in the hearts of at least those of us who were in the sport the year that it came out, because we needed it. Right. We needed that as a society, as a group of trail runners. And so it's infused into my soul as fondness that will be unmatched no matter how great future 200s are.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're saying here is that like Cocodona year one was Woodstock or the Monterey.
Absolutely.
Monterey 65, 68, whatever year it was when, the Monterey Festival was as well. Just an iconic event, right? That it was important for more reasons than just the running or just the music, I agree.
Yes.
But it's still
every Woodstock,
fast,
good.
Year over year. So, but so just to get back to Finn and Max real quick. we're not going out. I'm not going out over my skis, right? I mean, I think there's a nice narrative there that we might actually just like. It's interesting to see, right? There's going to be some people that are going to listen to this before Cocodona week kicks off. I think we plan to drop this over the weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see if in the live chat there are people who are naturally forming two camps. Because again, the reason why I think this is kind of a fun also case study of trying to build out these kind of rivalries is that I think Max and Finn, with the exception of Courtney, obviously, have the biggest, profiles. Like people know the most about Max and Finn because of their, accessibility and transparency. Finn's a podcast. We've listened to him. We know his voice. We know about his wife. We know about his new daughter, right? So like there's kind of this connection already to him. So when you're following along for 3 days, you want to know like what's going on with Finn. And then again, now you got the guys in the Max camp and the girls in the Max camp that are, connected to him through his transparency and his documentaries and, King of Moab. I think just before the race even starts, they're already so far ahead of everybody else, with regards to just people genuinely wanting to be, interested in their journey and what's going on with them, that it makes sense that this rivalry becomes something that we kind of push to the forefront. I think it's good for the sport.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. And I think we should lean into it. Like through the course of the week in the chat, we should be throwing that out there. And so, on Wolfie, on your Instagram, like give us updates. Where are they at with each other? I think, cause I think, so here's what I like. I'm viewing this as a hypothesis. Are these guys going to go at it? And then through the week we flesh out the hypothesis. So show us where they're at. Like, in your mind, you're seeing this as a potential. Now let's see, like at any given time, let's do some Max and Finn check-ins and let's tease this out through the week. And other than being entertaining and enjoyable, I think there's also something said here is that we need people setting rivalries up. We need people to, like, as you said, they're not going to do it themselves. So we should be setting them up. So let's test this out. I think it's a fun experiment.
Yeah, totally. And I think potentiality wise, like I think they both have the same potential. I don't think anybody's coming in as a massive favorite or underdog. It's impossible to compare different races to each other, but we got to do it because that's what we're here to do. And so if you look last year, Finn ran Cocodona, finished 7th place, I think just 70 hours, 22 minutes, left plenty of time, I think, on the course that, he knows he can go back and clean up with, maybe logistics, fitness, or, whatever the case is. It's nowhere near what his ceiling of potential is. But the Moab race that Max had, 69 hours, 22 minutes. So just an hour shorter, it's, I think on paper, 10 miles shorter. But again, I have no idea how to even begin to compare these two, with any sort of, intelligent, conversation. I've never stepped foot on either course, don't know the profiles all too great to be able to even compare them. But just on paper, you've got guys within about an hour of each other. It seems like going into this race, they should be pretty close to each other, man. And that's what I want to see more of the 200 is like, I think the pace that people are running is, pedestrian enough that you could have good live coverage to see, how they interact with each other on the trails. And it'd be fun to see like how they, get along with each other. Because in the hundreds, like you have, chase packs, you have guys that are grouping together at Western States, like, 7, 10, 15, at least through the first 40, 50 miles. And it'd be fun at Cocodona to kind of see these guys, emulate that and bounce back and forth with each other during the trail. Because the chase was great, but the chase, the Cocodona documentary, it never really gave you a sense of understanding how close or how far away they were from each other. And that's maybe something that I'd like to see more, within the 200 is to get a better perception as a fan, like just how close or how far they are, whether it's just like a visual map like Strava does, where you can kind of like see it a little bit better. And get an understanding of kind of how that looks.
Yeah. I think on some levels, the reality takes away from the drama, because if third place is 4 hours ahead of fifth place. Then all of a sudden it's like, well, that doesn't feel terribly dramatic.
No, right.
So
Yeah, 4 hours, right.
Though the reality is that Mike McKnight has proven you can jump from like 50th place and win something in these 200s. There's plenty of time. That's part of the fun, is that someone can be very far behind. At mile 100, you still have 150 more miles to make up ground. And that's the surprise to me of Cocodona, is that it can be really engaging even when someone is behind by 10 hours. They're still in it. They can still be in it because of how much can go wrong and right.
Right. So I was thinking about the 200s and just the way people are talking about it. And they're already talking about 200s with kind of the same narratives, talking points as like a Western States, right? They're breaking it down with projections. And, again, I think it's just the way the sport is right now with how we talk about it. And I had this thing that I thought of, like, don't 100 my 200s, kind of a play on like what you see when, you've got Arizona, Texas, like any of these states that are getting a mass influx of like Californians, right? Like, don't California my Texas or Arizona. And like we said, year one of Cocodona was so amazing. Like, we all have fond memories of it. And it nowhere near resembled or reminded us of a 100-miler at all. The conversation, nothing, one bit of it. And so this year, though, it's like on a just, critical velocity pace towards being considered a 100-miler. They're talking about aid stations, and how fast do we have to do the transitions, and, everything about the 200 is becoming, a conversation that's built in around the 100-miler. Are we doing that to our own, like, demise? Are we snuffing out the flame? Is the 200 losing some of the romanticism that we had? What do you think? I mean,
I'm with you. You messaged me that, and it's now I understand it better. Don't 100 my 200s. Yeah, because that's at one point it was kind of like, don't marathon my 100.
Right.
And then we had to give up because they marathoned the 100 to the betterment of the elite version. But the dirtbagness, that gets lost when you do that, that the reality that could Scott Jurek is he even a notable name today? If he was at his peak today, that could be that's for another time. But the reality is that, like, there's a dirtbagness to him, a dirtbagness to Speed Goat, all of that, when they marathoned our 100 or they're 100ing our 200s, that some really great, I would say arguably the best personalities get buried when you start to do this phenomenon that you're talking about, because what you're bringing in is people with, no offense, maybe some less personality, who are just incredible athletes, unconcerned with social media, unconcerned with how they're presented to the world. Whereas these dirtbags come in and maybe they've just got some personality, like, the Versteeg types or whatever. So yeah, I'm with you. Don't ruin it. I want to see great competition, but don't 100 don't marathon my 200, don't 100 my 200. Like, let's keep this thing. Let's keep our 200s weird.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Keep them weird, like, at least balance the conversation in the sense that, like, as much as, again, I have to get a feeling that, like, there's a lot of, like, we still don't know what we don't know at the 200-mile distance. And I think there's a rush to try and say that somewhere we've figured it out, or those that compete in the 200-milers have figured it out. Like, you look at a guy like McKnight, for example, he hasn't figured shit out at Cocodona. And I love that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I every time I try and think about what it's like to be Michael McKnight right now, it's like, God, dude, that's crazy, because he had so much success at the 200-mile distances, went to Cocodona. He's had success there. He's had the incredible story to come back. But he's also had days where he just can't get out of day one without a massive deficit. And, like, we haven't completely dialed in Cocodona or the 200-mile distance to the point where we should be talking about just minute, trying to do things with such precision in aid stations, or dialing the gear to a place that, like, is so, lightweight and specific to a certain area that it's, I feel like we still don't know quite a bit as much as we talk about the sport and the distance.
Yeah. When I think about Mike McKnight, I think about Jason Isbell has a song called "Last of My Kind." I feel like he's the last of the kind, and to some degree, I don't know. He straddles both because now he's gotten super fit. He's gotten into high rocks. Good for him. I mean, the dude looks ripped. He's got a lot of upper body. He's got to have more blood flow than Dan Green does, who's a little bit more not upper body like that. That said, I think that Mike McKnight represents the old school because he was doing it. He was able to get the Triple Crown of the 200s because he was kind of in rarefied air, but he was very much a dirtbag about how he approached it. And now all these other speedy guys came in, and his life isn't as easy, though. No one finishing 200 miler first is easy at all. It's just his life changed the way that you just said. Like it's had him on his heels. He's had to rethink strategy because all these super speedy guys who moved on from the 100 or simply jumped over it are now, I don't know, putting still the winningest 200-mile runner that we've got on his heels. And Mike is he's got back problems, but he's still a prime age to crush these things.
Right. Yeah.
But he's the last of his kind. He's the last of the old school.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. It feels like the 200-miler sport's progressing, like in dog years, like one year of Cocodona, 7 years of, performance gains. It's really wild.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just on this like rapid rocket ascension into space. And then I think eventually it'll get to a place where it's kind of just going to orbit for a while and kind of, probably plateau and see more marginal gains, or you're going to see different weather years become, more impactful. Everything's got to just compound on each other. Like if it's a hot start, then, that's just going to create slower times as guys are slowing down, carrying more water, dehydration and fueling issues much earlier in the race is going to make the second half probably, slower, and the overall times, creep up. So speaking of weather, this year's supposed to be incredible. We're going to have a cold front coming in. So it's going to be like
nice
in the high 60s at the race.
Oh my gosh.
So,
man,
they might be dealing with
speedy
hypothermic,
those overnight temps. I bet will be crazy.
Yeah. The desert's cold. So, even at Javelina, you've got people that deal with, hypothermia. So be interesting to see how people pivot and change kind of their strategies, this year, because I don't think you have to be maybe as conservative, with that first 50K up to Crown King.
Dude. Yeah, so we're going to get some records shattered at a very young race, in which every race every year right now is getting shattered at a substantial percentage of previous course records. That with those temperatures, there's potential for amazing course records.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think, we'll hopefully be able to look back, about a week and a half from today and, see how it all unfolded. I'm excited for it,
Yep.
So I had to come in full kitted out, Satisfy gear, plant my flag,
nice,
going for Max. I'm running in the Max camp. So if you see me in the live chat, just know that your boy Wolfie's fully behind Max, going to be pushing him forward to the finish. And what do you think? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here. If you had to pick, somebody like, like WrestleMania or, your
I'm a homer. Like, this is the thing. Like, I got to go with Salt Lake City.
Right.
I'm a homer. Like, I'm 100%. Someday we're going to have a Salt Lake City trail running jersey. I'm going to wear that jersey, and I don't care who it is. If it's Finn, if it's someone I don't know, I got to go for home team. And, Finn's been in Salt Lake for a good long time now. It's his home. He claims it. He champions it as good as or better than I ever have for the sport. So I got to go Finn. Got to go for my homer. Got to bring the title to Salt Lake City. That'd be awesome.
Anybody that's listened to you already knew who you were going to pick just off of the.
Yeah, I don't use logic. I use geography to make my picks.
Right. Now, you do have more tattoos than me, so there was a slight outside chance that I thought you might go with Max.
Yeah.
But no, I respect that. You
better tattoos, Max, for sure.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. So I think
all right. Well, yeah, let's do some check-ins. Let's build the hype over the week for this Finn and Max rivalry, and it'll be fun to do content and check in on it.
For sure. It's going to be fun.
And congrats on 20 episodes.
Yeah, man. 20 and going. So, fans have been great. Love all the audience support. Love doing this with you.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah, man.
Mix it up with Bad Runner's Take and then do the monologue on the weekend. And yeah, man. Keep growing forward.
You'll be joining Tommy Lewis soon on his podcast. That's Runnable, the great the great British podcaster and running personality, Tommy Lewis.
Yep. And then later today, it's 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the desert today, but later this afternoon, we've got the speed goat himself, Carl Meltzer, coming on to debate with us at Western. Hoka, title sponsor, how are they doing? Is there a better brand that, could be moving Western states and the sport forward? We'll see what he has to say.
States Debates Volume 3 recorded today, and that will also come out next week. So great.
I think we've got Joe Corcione, everyday ultra runner, podcaster, also a 250 mile, participant. He's going to come on and we're going to debate which course record is more vulnerable or has more lasting power, Jim's versus Courtney's. He thinks it's going to be Courtney, which then, delegates me to do and defend Jim. So that'll be a fun one to do later this month as well.
And then with the States Debates, then we're going to get into the 2025 running. We're going to start debating the field, right? Is that what's next?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're going to do more. We're going to sharpen the pencil and get a little more specific to the 2025 race. So much to talk about there. I don't even know where to begin to start, but yeah, we'll have some fun and bring on some more guests and talk about this race.
Right on. Well, stoked on everything. Let's do this again.
Yeah, man. You bet. Have a good one.
All right. See you.